Hey everyone, as you know, I am Maya Azucena. I want to welcome you to I Am Enough World. And I'm so happy to have Timo Ellis with us now. Timo is the co-creator and producer of my I Am Enough project. And what we're going to do today is talk about his I Am Enough story. So, Timo, welcome, first of all. And I want to ask you if you wouldn't mind to tell us a time in your life when you were made to feel in some way that you were not enough.
Okay, sure. I can try to keep this as brief and as succinct as possible. When we'd spoken about this setup, this question, the thing that came to mind most immediately and most prominently was the experiences I have when I got sexually assaulted twice when I was 8 years old by a friend of the family, which sent me for a profound psychological and emotional and everything tailspin for many, many years. And I actually experienced profound feelings of self-loathing and worthlessness and just kind of this innate, like, kind of dirtiness, which is, I think typical, sadly, of the way children process, and try to metabolize like these really very, very difficult, kind of impossible to make sense of and to really properly process complicated and horrible feelings. But generally put, yeah, in the wake of that experience, I felt categorically, existentially way less than enough. So yeah, that was super deep and horrible that way. I'm
Do you
laughing now, but it's not funny. It's the truth.
No, I understand. So as you became a teenager and a young adult leading into, also becoming an artist and a professional, do you feel that this sensation that you are not enough, or that you blame yourself for something, you were holding that within you? Like,
I
how would
mean, well, yeah, I mean, for sure. Like, basically, like, the thing I think normal, typical, kind of coping strategy is to just compartmentalize, is to actually compartmentalize and actually bury these really raw, kind of like, sort of experiences of psychic pain and really raw, unmanageable, kind of out of control vulnerability, and also feelings of guilt and shame and disgust. Over the, it was, which also for me personally I ended up managing and sort of mediating with substance abuse, which I ended up having significant issues with that over the, for the next, for many, many years after that. But to answer your question, like, it was at the end of high school and then through in the years after college that I, in earnest, wanted to try to start to, undertake to even try to heal, to even to revisit any of the stuff and to try to understand how to possibly heal my mind and my psyche, and to try to relatively integrate these parts of myself that I had actually buried and kept, kept out of the forefront of my emotional and, really just the forefront of my consciousness. So it was with the help of a few different therapists that I finally basically started to, and also here's the clincher here, is with uh, a handful of basic Buddhist meditation, breathing exercise principles and practices that became the forum within which I actually just started to embody. I started to actually just integrate my feelings with more consistency and with more seriousness, with more, like a kind of an actual authentic intensity. And so
you
the thing I would, the way that I would try to just describe this in the shorthand is where I started to recover my just basic feelings of dignity and self-worth and enoughness by the, not only the originally the intellectual real, sort of the intellectual realization, but eventually the more embodied realization that uh, one can only think their way out of feeling things for so long. I mean, it is true to be fair. It is possible to remain compartmentalized and repressed and just disconnected from your deeper feelings forever. And many millions of people probably do for we're totally legitimately considering how horrible and traumatic certain many things can be. For me
You
personally,
found you could actually face it and actually extend past that thing that kind of you maybe got, like, stuck in the trauma, and now by facing it or kind of facing yourself, not it even, but facing you
yeah.
yourself, you're able to kind of actually pass it, and by passing it, grow, I guess. Is that does that safe to
Well, yeah.
say?
Yeah, I mean, I think the thing is, then in a way, I think it seems very, it's almost very, it's very simple. It seems sort of obvious in the abstract, but like in a way, the only way through is through. Like the thing, and you know, it's like the only way for me to actually to diminish the intensity of the, you know, the sort of the intensity of the trauma and the pain is to actually create the conditions where I myself could cultivate over time an environment within my own mind and body of acceptance and of
Mm,
and generosity just towards my wounded child self, which sounds, it may sound corny, but it really is powerful and it's fucking true. That's just the way, and that's the way I feel very strongly about that on a philosophical in terms of the principles about how, at least for me, I was able to, and I'm still in the long-term process of cultivating creating an atmosphere of acceptance and friendliness for all of my, you know, all of the chaos and the uncertainty, and also the entire range of emotions of anger and resentment and, you know, and vulnerability and just shame and everything, the entire spectrum of it. But I think I guess the basic, in as much as that we're trying to consolidate this into a short form explanation of the whole thing, is that for me, Buddhist meditation practices enabled me to actually connect, to integrate, so that I wasn't actually entirely just a ruminating, cognitive, overly cerebral, frantic, you know, kind of cerebral energy, and I was able to actually bypass like my own like long-term habits of avoiding just feeling basic raw psychic vulnerability and pain, to the point where actually it became like I became manageable. Like I started to actually be able to process some of this stuff in a way where I didn't die or disappear, or I didn't actually totally freak out, or I didn't have to relive it either. That's extremely important.
mhm, mhm.
But I think, you know, in terms of the the basic principle of one of these things, which I remember reading, it's a Buddhist principle, and I think it's I credited in my mind to Pema Chodron from the Tibetan Buddhist tradition. Is just the basic idea of you have everything you need. And so that was so powerful for me, because the implications of that are like, I actually have the strength and the ability to be able to, with help, with the, you know, with the counsel of trusted guides and counsels and help teachers, to create an atmosphere where I could hold space for myself in a way where I could kind of self-parent. I could actually create the conditions for me to just ameliorate the sense, you know, to the sense of just dread and avoidance and all that stuff over time, in such a way where actually I just wasn't naturally just blocking all that stuff out, or just endlessly burying it with stories, or just with the distractions, or just without, because I hadn't yet seriously cultivated a regular practice of even just being in my body, like actually voluntarily, regularly, just undertaking practices of just bodily awareness. And so to me,
Okay,
I've
mhm.
been the key for healing my own trauma. So that's really what I'm trying to say
That's
here.
phenomenal, and, I have experienced and come into certain I agree with you, meaning that I relate to the things that you have shared, and I would like to ask you one final thought before you go, which is, what would you say to your earlier self? What would you say to your younger self now that you have this perspective of acceptance and love for you?
God, it's like such so heavy, you know. I would
I
like
mean, think how you would say it to your earlier self,
it's like you
maybe
know, like I love you. You're okay. You're actually innately worthy, and that you're worthy of love, and you're worthy of your own love, and it's you're worthy of taking the time to take the time to just calm your mind and spirit so that you can actually not be entirely operating from a place of reaction and avoidance, which is a it's of course, I wasn't even aware of any of these practices when I was growing it up at all. It wasn't until I was in my late 20s till I even really started to investigate, the principles of Buddhist meditation in this case, which is the thing that's been the most restorative for me. But the basic thing I would want to say is that, take it easy. I love you. Take your time, and don't take all of it so seriously if you can help it, because you're not going to disintegrate or die, even though it seems like in the worst case scenario that you're going to explode, and you're going to combust into space and in an explosion of shame. And that didn't happen. That likely, at least hopefully, won't happen to people, and within their own minds. But
I think that's the most touching and beautiful, way that you wrapped up and shared, because, you can only speak from your own experience, and your own experience has taught you that you can, um, you can step through it into a healed version of yourself, and
yes,
it does start with loving yourself. And even if you don't know how to love yourself, it starts with the practice of loving yourself until you love yourself,
I am enough, and you are enough. Are you ready to share your I am enough story?